This business is not sponsored by or affiliated with the United States Department of Veterans Affairs or your state's Department of Military and Veterans Affairs or any other federally chartered veterans service organization. Other organizations, including but not limited to your state's Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, a local veteran service organization, and other federally chartered veteran service organizations provide this service free of charge. You may qualify for other veterans benefit services outside the scope of what this business offers. All disability claims for increased ratings are processed by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs. This business cannot expedite the processing of your claim by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello,
Welcome
everybody.
to this week's VA Claims Insider Facebook Live. I'm Coach Seabury, joined by the amazing Coach Kimberly Coleman.
Hello,
All
hello.
right, so we are so excited you're here because today's session could really change how you look at your claim. We're going to be talking about a topic that confuses a lot of veterans when they receive a decision that doesn't quite match what they expected, VA pyramiding. Let's give everyone a minute to hop on, and while we wait, let's jump in the comments. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Comment your branch of service and years of service. Give your coach a shout out if you're working with one. As us coaches, we love to hear from you. And while everyone is joining in, grab a pen and paper. You're going to want to take some notes. All right, so who's tuning in with us today? Let's get things going. Where are you tuning in from, Coach Kimberly? What state?
I'm in Texas, San Antonio specifically.
Amazing.
Yeah. What about yourself?
I am tuning in from Barcelona, Spain. It just happens to be the current location.
Awesome. I bet it's beautiful there.
Yeah, it's very nice. Okay, we've got Manuel Salazar, U.S. Army retired from Ohio. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Salazar.
Excellent. And there's Mr. Dave, U.S. Navy from Idaho. Welcome, welcome.
Harry from Pennsylvania, 5 years in the Navy. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Retired U.S. Marine Corps from Florida. I see your tag name, but not your real name, but welcome.
Thanks for joining us from Florida. It's actually where my hometown is. All right, we've got Iowa, Lee Garrett, Army Infantry, 87 to 91 and 06 to 2010.
Sweet.
Amazing. We've got people from everywhere joining
Yes.
us right now.
Korean DMZ. I've been there before. It was really awesome. Welcome, Wayne. Welcome.
Awesome. Army 68 to 71. Thank you for your service, Wayne.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know it takes some time, some tardy people joining our live, but we'll get started shortly here in the next minute. We got Diana Gonzalez. Diana is a Navy veteran retired in Edinburgh, Texas.
Yes. And then we have Michael Wentworth, Round Rock, Texas. Retired Army. Welcome.
Tony Cheek. Tony is a U.S. Marine Corps from Granbury, Texas. All right, we've got 3 Texas in a row there.
Texas is a good place. All right, we're almost about to start, everyone. Continue giving shout outs. Tell us where you are.
Lawton Jones. Lawton was in the U.S. Air Force, retired. Go Air Force.
All right, everyone. So I am Coach Kimberly. I am an Air Force veteran. I proudly served for 22 years as a health service manager before retiring honorably in 2019. After 2 decades of service, I decided it was time to focus on my family and be a stay-at-home mom for a while. My kids were still young, and I thought, I've given the military 22 years of my life. Now it's time to focus on my babies. Okay. So as it turns out, my retirement came right before COVID. So it truly was a blessing in disguise. I was able to focus on my children's education and take care of them while the schools were closed. Once things settled and they went back to school, I decided I was going to go back to school myself and earned another degree in healthcare administration. After that, I was thinking, all right, I need to do something for me now. I wanted to return to the workforce, but I wanted to do something different, something meaningful. So, one day I was scrolling through Facebook and I came across an amazing group of people, much like what Coach Seaberry and I are doing right now. I loved their energy, their mission, and the way they were educating veterans. And I remember thinking, I'd like to be a part of something like that. Well, a few weeks later, I saw a job posting for a veteran coach position, and here I am today. And I absolutely love what I'm doing. When I retired, I was fortunate to come out of the military with 100% P&T total disability rating. So I did not personally go through the VA claims process, but my husband did, still is, as a matter of fact. So I've seen firsthand how stressful and confusing and overwhelming it can be. That's why I'm so thankful to be here now to educate and empower veterans through this process. So it's a lot less intimidating and a lot more manageable. I'm
Mhm.
excited to be here to share this stage with you all, to serve along with Coach Seaberry. Ma'am, would you like to share a little bit about yourself at this
Of
time?
course. Yeah. So, first off, Coach Kimberly, thank you for your service. I love your story, and I know VACI and your veterans are so lucky to have you. I am Coach Rochelle Seaberry, and I've been a coach here at VA Claims Insiders for 5 years now. I absolutely love what I get to do every single day. I'm not a veteran myself, but I grew up in a proud military family. My dad served 20 years in the Navy, and my grandfather, uncles, and some cousins served as well. So I've seen firsthand what service looks like in both uniform and at home. And now, as a proud military spouse, I get to live that life from another perspective. That's why this mission means so much to me. I know how confusing and overwhelming the VA process can feel, and being able to educate veterans, help them understand the system, and see what's truly possible, that's what I'm passionate about. Every time we see a veteran gain clarity, and I think I speak for myself and Coach Kimberly, it, every time we see a veteran gain clarity, celebrate a win, or finally feel seen, it's a reminder why this work matters so much. So thank you for being here today and for trusting us to walk alongside you in this journey. But enough about me. Before we dive into today's topic, we always like to take a quick moment to explain who we are and what we do here at VACI. So, especially for anyone joining us for the first time. So, Coach Kimberly, can you please share a little bit about what VACI is all about and how we focus on educating veterans through this process?
I would love to. Quick note, we at VA Claims Insider are not accredited agents, VSOs, attorneys, or affiliated with the VA. We're an education-based coaching company. Our mission is to teach you how the system works, give you strategy, connect you with medical experts so you can build the strongest possible claim. We offer one-on-one coaching, strategy sessions, claim education, CMP exam education, live classes, kind of like this one, and a community of veterans and coaches. If you would like to learn more, the first place to start is with a no-risk discovery call. You can book yours today by visiting go.vaclaimsinsider.com. Or you can sign up with me or with Coach Seaberry directly, and we'll put our sign up links in the chat. Okay, so Coach Seaberry, tell us, what are we talking about today?
All right, so let's get to it. Today, we are tackling a topic that can seriously impact your VA rating, but often gets overlooked: VA pyramiding. Now, don't let the name throw you off. It sounds complicated, but by the end of this live, you'll understand exactly what it means,
Mhm.
how it affects your compensation, and most importantly, how to avoid getting shortchanged by it. So, we'll cover what pyramiding is and why it exists, how the VA rates symptoms, not just diagnoses, real examples of how overlapping conditions can change your overall rating, and finally, how to protect yourself by making sure your symptoms are clearly documented and distinct. Emphasis on that one. And of course, we'll save time for your questions at the end. So, Coach Kimberly, let's start at the beginning. What exactly is this pyramiding rule?
All right, so here's where it all comes from. VA pyramiding rule is written in 38 CFR 4.14, and it literally says the evaluation for the same disability under various diagnoses is to be avoided. Now, that's straight out of the regulation, but let's put it in plain English. What the VA is really saying is that you can only be rated once for each symptom, not for every diagnosis that causes it. That's a big distinction that so many of our veterans miss. Most people assume that the VA rates disabilities, but technically the VA rates the symptoms those disabilities produce. For example, a knee condition. Let's say you've got both arthritis and a torn meniscus in the same knee. Each diagnosis might sound like a separate condition, but if they cause the same symptoms like pain, swelling, or limited motion, the VA will not rate them separately. Instead, they'll combine them under one diagnostic code and call it something like chronic knee pain with arthritis and torn meniscus. This becomes a single service-connected condition with one rating that represents the overall level of disability for that joint.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's take a shoulder condition. Let's see if I'm on the same page. Maybe you've been diagnosed with bursitis
Mhm.
and rotator cuff tendinopathy, two different diagnoses, but both conditions can cause pain, stiffness, and reduced range of motion. So the VA may combine them into one rating that represents how much you can move your arm and how much that motion is limited by pain under that diagnostic code.
Yeah. So even though you may have more than one current diagnosis, the VA looks at how those conditions function together, and that's how they avoid pyramiding or paying twice for the same symptom.
Exactly. All right. So that's why it's so important to understand how the VA actually rates disabilities. It's not really about how many conditions you can list on paper and submit to the VA. It's about those symptoms those conditions cause and how much those symptoms affect your daily life. What actually warrants a rating for you? When the VA reviews your claim, they're looking at the full picture, your medical records, any lay statements that you've provided, your DBQs, the disability benefits questionnaires, independent medical opinions if you submitted one, and even the results from your C&P exam
Mhm.
play a big part. All of that evidence gets measured against something called the VASRD, the Veteran Affairs Schedule for Rating Disabilities. It's the VA's playbook. It outlines which symptoms match which rating percentages for each condition. Here's the bottom line. The more your symptoms limit what you can do, whether it's physically, mentally, or emotionally, based on the type of claim condition, the higher your rating tends to be. And if your symptoms don't match or don't cause your much limitation, you might still get service connected, but at a 0% rating. That means the VA recognizes your condition, but it's not severe enough right now to be compensable, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. That's where pyramiding really comes into play. Once you understand that the VA rates symptoms instead of just conditions, it's easy to see how overlapping symptoms can affect your overall rating. So here's what it looks like in practice. You might have several service connected conditions, but if they all produce the same functional limitation, like pain, reduced range of motion, or fatigue, the VA only counts the limitation once. Here's some examples. Let's start with mental health. It's common to see both PTSD and depression diagnosed together. But because they're rated under the same criteria and often share overlapping symptoms like anxiety, sleep issues, difficulty concentrating, the VA will not assign two separate ratings. Or let's say you have migraine headaches and traumatic brain injury, and both cause sensitivity to light and sound. The VA won't pay twice for those symptoms. They'll choose the diagnostic code that best represents your overall impairment. That's why it's important to make sure your symptoms are described and documented clearly. It's so obvious to the examiner and to the VA how each condition um, uniquely impacts you.
That's such an important part, I would say. It's something many veterans overlook, actually. So let's get into how to avoid falling victim to pyramiding. When your records make it clear which symptoms belong to which condition, it helps the VA separate them correctly instead of grouping everything under one rating. That's what prevents you from losing out on the rating that you deserve. You want to be specific during your C&P exams. Don't just say, I have pain. Everyone has different pain thresholds, so this doesn't even begin to address your condition and the limitations. Explain it. What kind of pain? Where exactly is it? When does it happen? What makes it worse? The more detail that you provide, the easier it is for the examiner to identify which symptoms belong to which condition and the correct warranted rating. Let's revisit that example about the knee that we talked about earlier.
Okay.
If your knee shows painful or limited motion, that's typically rated under diagnostic code 5260 or 5261 for flexion and extension. But if you also have instability or recurrent subluxation, meaning your knee gives out or it feels unstable, that's rated separately under diagnostic code 5257. In that case, the VA can assign separate ratings because each code measures a different issue. One evaluates range of motion and the other evaluates stability. What they can't do is rate you twice for the same symptom, like giving two ratings for pain or limited flexion. That's exactly what the the pyramiding rule prevents. So yes, if your medical evidence clearly supports both instability and limited motion, you could see something like a 10% rating for instability and a 20% rating for limited motion because they're distinct impairments.
Okay. So, with your example from earlier about the shoulder, if you also have nerve involvement like numbness, tingling, and weakness running down your arm, that's a separate issue affecting the nerves, not the joint itself. So, in that case, the VA could assign you a second rating for the nerve impairment because it's a distinct functional limitation. Those symptoms are rated under diagnostic code 8510 through 8519, which covers the different nerves that branch out from the shoulders and from the arm. The VA can assign a separate rating for nerve impairment if it produced distinct symptoms like sensory loss, muscle weakness, and numbness that don't overlap with the joint pain or limited motion. So, in that situation, you may have one rating for how your shoulder joint moves and another for how the nerve damage affects the strength and sensation.
So, how do we make sure we're articulating this properly to our doctors or to the VA C&P examiner? I would say to help keep your symptoms straight, maybe keep a symptom journal, right? Track how often your symptoms are occurring as they're occurring, how severe they are. Make a note, like what were you doing and what actually happened, and how long did it last? Consistency in your reporting helps paint a clear picture for the VA and strengthens your claim. When your symptoms are specific and consistent, and supported by strong medical evidence, you give the VA exactly what they need to rate each condition correctly. And that is how you avoid falling victim to pyramiding.
All right, so as you can see, avoiding pyramiding really comes down to having a clear strategy, understanding how your conditions relate to one another, and backing it all up with strong medical evidence because medical evidence wins claims.
And that's exactly where the SEM method comes from: strategy, education, and medical evidence.
Mhm.
It's the framework that we use here at VA Claims Insider to educate veterans to see the full picture, make sense of complex rules such as pyramiding, that's just one of many, right? And to approach their claims with confidence. Coach Kimberly, can you talk about how the SEM method works?
Absolutely. So now that we've broken down what pyramiding is and how it works, let's tie it back together to something that really connects everything that we teach here at VA Claims Insider, the SIM method: strategy, education, and medical evidence. Because understanding a rule like pyramiding is one thing, but knowing how to apply that knowledge to your claim, well, that's where the real power is. All right, so we're going to start with strategy. So this is about knowing how your condition and symptoms connect and making sure you are not unintentionally overlapping the same symptoms under different diagnoses. That's how you avoid issues like pyramiding. A strong strategy helps you focus on your efforts on what matters most. And that's exactly what your coach does. You take a step back, look at the whole picture, and plan a path forward. Then comes education. What we're doing right now is part of that, educating you to understand why the VA makes the decision the way that they do. Um, when you understand the logic behind the system, you can work with it instead of feeling lost or frustrated. And finally, there's medical evidence. It's the one thing that brings it all home: service treatment records, CMP exams, and independent medical opinion. These are what show the VA which symptoms belong to which condition and how severe they are. That clarity is what separates a confusing claim from a strong, organized one. So when you combine all three, strategy, education, and medical evidence, you're not just filing a claim, you're building a case that tells a full story. That's how you avoid mistakes like pyramiding and give the VA everything they need to make the right decision.
That's so true. SEM really is what educates veterans to go from guessing to understanding. It gives you clarity and confidence in how to communicate your symptoms, and that's what leads to better outcomes.
Mhm.
So, all right, so that was a great big rundown of tying how pyramiding and SEM actually go hand in hand as you're developing your own claim strategy, right? So, if today's session opened your eyes, don't stop here. Take the next step in your education. Book a discovery call at go.vaclaimsinsider.com and see how the SEM method applies to your situation, right? Because everyone's situation is different. And if you want to dive in even deeper, Brian's book, VA Claims Secret, is available now on Amazon. It's a great resource that explains the why behind so many of the VA's decisions.
All right, veterans, you now have a foundational knowledge of what VA pyramiding is, how it works, and how it can impact your rating. So now we want to hear from you. What are your questions? Whether it's about pyramiding, overlapping symptoms, or just general VA education topics that need more clarity. Drop your questions in a comment, and we'll do our best to explain and point you in the right direction.
Just a reminder, we can't provide personalized strategy here. We can answer general questions. Everyone's records and situations are different, and there's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to VA claims. But what we can do, of course, is educate you, help you understand the rules, the process, and how it all works so you can take the next step with confidence. So yes, let's go ahead and get to some questions. Let's see, it looks like we had some issues with the streaming, so hopefully you guys caught a lot of that, but I think it's been advised you joined YouTube while Facebook reconnects. So let's get to some of these questions. All right, let's start with, looks like St. Andrews 318. What about fibromyalgia and IBS? Okay, in regards to pyramiding, for those two conditions, those two are two separate conditions. They do also or may have overlapping symptoms. So with that, I think IBS falls under digestive system, right? And is rated based on alternating effects of like constipation and diarrhea, whereas the fibromyalgia piece comes from musculoskeletal system, in addition to like fatigue and overall tiredness. You would have to have separate ratings or separate diagnoses for those conditions. So being able to distinguish in your records the IBS symptoms specifically, chronic diarrhea or constipation, alternating bowel habits, cramping, bloating, urgent bowel movements, abdominal pain, that's clearly, and the key word there is clearly GI related, versus the fibromyalgia specific symptoms like widespread musculoskeletal pain and stiffness. Fibromyalgia, the pyramiding piece when it comes to musculoskeletal pain is going to be if you actually have a diagnosis for back condition like a lumbosacral strain. The overlapping symptom would be, is the pain that I'm talking about associated to my fibromyalgia, or is it associated to my actual diagnosis for my lumbosacral strain, right? So that's kind of where the pyramiding for musculoskeletal symptoms would be deciphered. Fatigue, not limited to the GI distress, but more alongside of the fibromyalgia, and then tender points throughout the body, or even like headaches and underlying symptoms like that. So I hope that answered your question.
All right. At Champ 9104 has a question. I was denied for about 4 or 5 disabilities. If I have the nexus letter from my doctor, should that be able to be put in to help overturn the denials? Well, yeah, nexus letters are one of the most important tools when it comes to a VA claim. All right. So if your doctor, a private provider, is willing to give you their independent medical opinion and provide a rationale to why they feel that way, then yeah, that is strong medical evidence that can most definitely help possibly overturn those denials. So yeah,
That's
if you have a doctor that's willing to do so, yeah, take it and take advantage of it and see if it will help with those denials in the future.
And just to add to that, remember the nexus is just one part of the Kaluza triangle. Okay,
Yes,
so
definitely.
although you have a nexus letter, you really want to make sure that you've got the diagnosis, that you're filing the claim properly. Are you connecting it direct to service? Or are you filing it as a secondary condition? And then the third is the nexus. But let's add on, right? Because we just talked about pyramiding here. So we're talking symptoms, severity, frequency, and all of that. So that fourth piece would be, are your symptoms properly documented so that not only are you service connected for the condition, but are you properly rated for it as well? Okay, so big picture as we talked about during our live today. All right, so next question is coming from Yang G1. I have a claim for 2 secondary conditions that I've received decision letters and ratings. However, the claim never closed and I was requested to attend the C&P again. Not sure what's up, helpline, no help. Okay, sorry. So call the VA hotline. Call that 1-800-827-1000. Maybe there's a delay on what's on the internet or what's on va.gov on the browser versus, what's on the app. I've seen and I've heard of veterans seeing different things where they received a decision letter, but the claim is still open on va.gov, or maybe the C&P exam was requested again because someone's not communicating with someone else. So the best way to get the clarity on that question, Young, is call the VA hotline, have them explain it to you, kind of let them know, hey, I received a decision already on this date. My decision letter is dated this date. Is this request after my decision? Why, why am I getting that request? And then they'll be able to tell you, but could be a million reasons why.
Yep. Call that 1-800 number.
Oh, there was a continued. Oh, sorry. The status continues to be waiting on medical opinions from OptumServe, which thus has been twice. Have you seen or heard of this action? So as I already explained, but that last question, yes, I've seen this before, right? I've also seen, and I don't know, Coach Kimberly, if you've seen how sometimes the VA might just be requesting another medical opinion, right? It might still be an evaluation. Again, the communication between OptumServe, who is a contracted company, right, to the VA directly, there just might be a lapse in their communication. I think that was everything on that question.
Let's see. Is it Miss Kathy Palma, if I pronounced that right? Can you talk about insomnia? Can I get rated for that? So insomnia is actually a symptom, not a diagnosis. And correct me if I'm wrong, Coach Seabury, but insomnia does fall up under mental health. So you would be more going in for like a mental health evaluation for your insomnia, because insomnia is a symptom, not a condition that's diagnosed.
That's correct. And just to add to that, you're absolutely right. It is a symptom of an overall greater condition like mental health. Out of the 31 symptoms of mental health, sleep impairment is technically where insomnia falls under. So it's not a rateable condition. You really do want to speak with a coach about that, because the insomnia can be connected, or the mental health can be connected a couple of different ways, right? Depending on the best strategy for you and what your path of least resistance might be. So if you don't already have a coach, definitely get with one. All right. You want to read the next question? Let's see. Through Telemedica, I have a Nexus letter and a DBQ for sleep apnea. Also have a sleep study showing the apnea is there. Okay. Question is, will there be much of a chance that this claim will be decided without a C&P? Okay, so there is no standard. I've seen both situations. A vet gets scheduled for a C&P exam, even though it was an in and out, like 5-minute. I asked you 2 questions and then you got to go. I've also seen an ACE exam happen, just the records review, which is technically still a C&P, right? So we're going to say that's still a C&P, where they might call you and ask you a question or 2, and then that be your exam. And then others where you got a decision without one. Right. Remember that a C&P exam is the VA's request for a medical opinion, despite what your medical evidence already says. So as long as your medical evidence is strong, then you've got a solid claim. Good deal. All right. What do we got in the chat? All right. All right, so here's this question. With pyramiding, are you saying if I were diagnosed with anxiety and depression, I won't be rated for both? Good question. That's actually a really good question, because I think when it comes to mental health, that's probably the best example for pyramiding, right? So if you've got two different diagnoses like anxiety and depression, the VA will not rate you separately for the two based on two different diagnoses for the same symptoms, because mental health falls under the same diagnostic criteria, the same rating criteria. So no, if anything, if you do have the two diagnoses and you are able to get both of them service connected, like what Coach said earlier about how they will combine the two and you'll just get the higher rating. So it might read depression with anxiety or anxiety with depression at 50%, for example. You won't get 50% for anxiety and then 30% for depression. That is exactly what pyramiding is. Okay.
Okay. And Cecilia has a question. Do you need a nexus letter for secondaries? Well, let's think about what a nexus letter is. A nexus letter is that link between a current diagnosis and an in-service event, injury, or illness. So, okay, so maybe you have a current diagnosis of migraines, and then you have a in-service event, maybe tinnitus, because you already service connected for it. But you still may need that link, a medical opinion to link the two together. So in a case like that, yes, a nexus letter is needed for secondary conditions. You got to have those three elements of the Kaluza triangle for the VA to be able to make a solid decision and approve your claim.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Maria Rodriguez asked, I had an exam with OptumServe. The exam lasted about 15 minutes. Upon arrival, the examiner stated that he did not have any records in his file. I brought hard copies of my latest hepatologist and primary care summary reports, but he said he was not permitted to review or accept them. That is true. Sometimes they will not. The big thing to all of our viewers today, when it comes to CNP exams, this is an opportunity for you to get a medical opinion that goes along with the same thing as your medical evidence, right? So answering the questions to further emphasize the condition and how it's related to your military service. Is there a chance that you'll get someone who will review your records? Yes. And then is there a chance that you won't? Yes. Keep in mind, the way the VA's process works is you go to a CNP exam, you get your evaluation, and then your CNP examiner's notes get sent to the rater. The rater is the one that actually makes a decision by reviewing the medical evidence as well as the CNP examiner's medical opinion. So having a strong CNP exam that supports your claim condition, the best way to get the best results.
All right. So Diane Davis has a question. She says, hello, I want to know, I am service connected already, but they only gave 10% for my back, which is hurting all the time. Should I put in for a new claim or an increase? Also, I have PTSD really bad. Ooh, my question went away.
It's on the screen.
I see it. Okay.
Really bad.
Really, yeah. I have PTSD really bad. Should I put in an increase for that? Thank you. All right. So if you're already service connected for your back and it is causing you more pain, your condition has gotten worse, then yes, you can absolutely put in for an increase for it because you're already service connected. So it will be an increase, not a new claim. All right. So you're going to look for documentation. If it's continuously getting worse, are you still going to the doctor for it? It's going to show the chronicity of your pain. All right. So yes, put in an increase for it. You also have PTSD really bad. You're currently sitting at 70%. But with PTSD or any mental health, 70% is actually the average of most of our veterans. So before thinking of putting into an increase, I would definitely reach out with this discovery call, have the opportunity to review some of our mental health resources to help you determine, hey, am I currently sitting, am I rated appropriately, or I'm definitely sitting at 100%, but you
Mhm.
definitely need to be sure before you go in for that increase. Because always remember, when you go in for an increase, you could possibly come out with the decrease. It's all, it's a possibility. So
Right.
ensure, educate yourself. Knowledge is power. Know that what you're going in for an increase for is warranted, always.
And Diane, I recommend checking out VA Claims Insider's blog page. If
Mm.
you go to vaclaimsinsider.com/blog, we'll put it in the chat for you. There's a search bar. Just type in like back or just type in PTSD and it'll break down the disability rating and the symptoms associated to that disability rating. It might help you kind of identify if it is a good claim strategy for you. All right. Wayne Kern said, can you comment on SMC? All right, so I'm gonna be brief on this one because it is very large section of information. I'm gonna start off by saying, Wayne, we did a really good Facebook Live on that a little while ago. So if you're in Facebook or if you're on YouTube, just type in SMC and we actually break down the different categories for SMC because there's so many. SMC stands for Special Monthly Compensation for those that don't know. It's extra money that the VA pays on top of your regular disability rating if your conditions cause serious limitations, like losing the use of a hand or a foot, right? So loss of limb. So needing help with daily activities or being housebound would qualify you for that SMC.
All right, at Alaskan Assassin 1757. Question. I know, right? I like that. I had my CMP exam yesterday for PTSD, depression, and anxiety. The examiner was 10 minutes late and felt rushed. At the end, he said, I got all I need and hope you get help. Is that a good sign? Well, good sign or not. But what I will say, obviously, if you already had your CMP, hopefully you have a coach with VA Claims Insider. I would reach out to your coach and let them know of your concerns, because if you do have what you feel is a bad CMP, you were rushed, you don't feel as if the examiner gave you an allotted amount of time, then there's ways to combat that you can call the 1-800-827-1000. That's the VA's number. You can call them and report that you didn't feel as if you had the best CMP and provide your reasons. I'd recommend you do a memo for record, keep that for your notes, and get with your coach. Your coach can also direct you in the right direction of how to report a bad CMP if that's what you feel. But whether it's a good sign or a bad sign, when it comes to the examiners, they're not there to give you a final result. They're there to observe and write what they see and report it to the VA. The VA has adjudicators that will make that final decision.
That's right.
Okay.
All right, I don't even know how to pronounce that. Stasiak. Hello, I have a 90% service-connected disability through multiple claims. However, one of the more severe disabilities is hearing loss, and I was a member of the 3M earplug lawsuit in which I received a small lump sum, but I did not receive any claim for it. Tinnitus, as I have been out for quite a few years and have been a bit of a vagabond, so I don't have access to a lot of my medical records, nor do I go to the doctor when I should, so it's hard to have documentation. I'm just wondering what I meant to add in there that I've got a 0% for my tinnitus, even though it is an extremely severe case. Okay. What I'm going to say, Stasiak, without having reviewed your medical records, is you said a key thing there. I don't go to the doctors when I should. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to pursue any disability claim, you need to go to the doctors because that's what they're going to look at, right? If you're saying in a CMP exam, I'm dealing with really bad tinnitus, but then at the last appointment, whenever you did go and they did ask about any ringing or how your hearing is, and you said nothing or no problem or whatever, then they're going to bear more weight on your evidence, right? On your medical evidence. So it's very important that if you're going to pursue something such as the tinnitus, that you are complaining about it, right? Just go to the doctor, give them an actual emphasis on what you're currently dealing with. The big thing about it is if it's already service connected, then you've already done, the hard part. You just got to get it currently evaluated so that you can make sure that your claim is solid.
Okay. Now, Maria, back to her comment in regards to Optimum Health. I had uploaded all my records for my claim. How is it that he didn't have my records that I submitted with my claim? Do they not have access to what I submit? Yes, they should definitely have access to everything that you submitted. So how he didn't have access, that I cannot speak of. But again, with your concerns, I would definitely call the 1-800-827-1000 number for the VA and ask that question. They can see what was submitted and what was forwarded to the VA contractor, Optimum Health, and have them look into that for you. That would be my recommendation.
That's right. All right. Let's see. What else do we have? Pris Velasquez says, my PTSD has been turned down for my increase. I have not worked at my job over 7 months due to my symptoms getting worse. 80% on my back pain and PTSD is all I have, and now with no pay increase is making it worse. So, Ms. Velasquez, I think putting together a claim that supports the warranted increase that you feel like you deserve is your first next step, right? If you haven't spoken with a coach, I recommend definitely signing up. That way someone can do a one-on-one coaching with you, review what is in your medical records, or maybe there's not enough in your records and we need to connect you with an examiner so that you can get your symptoms properly documented. I think the big thing is if you feel like your symptoms have gotten worse, have you talked about it, right? Definitely don't suffer in silence. Oh, she said, with my PTSD at 70%, I was recently admitted to a crisis center for suicide and my claim continues to be denied. I'm so sorry to hear that. I just don't understand that how to assist me to get to 100%. I was in the Navy in the 80s and my MST did not come out until 2017. So you're already rated. They've already acknowledged that your PTSD is service connected. So you don't need to prove what happened in the 80s, right? If you've got medical evidence to submit that supports your claim for an increase, that would be the step, right? Submitting the supportive evidence that you need. Definitely get with a coach, Ms. Velasquez, so that, again, you can get that one-on-one coaching. Someone can get eyes on your medical records and they can coach you through the process. That way you can get the rating that you deserve.
Excellent. You guys have some wonderful questions today. Wonderful questions.
We're trying to tie everything back to pyramiding. But it's all good. I think it's definitely, helpful because the questions that you guys ask might be helping someone else that's just watching and not sure what to ask or how to get started, right? All right. Stasiak. Again, I hope I'm saying that right because you said it twice. It's like I'm saying it wrong and wrong. I apologize. All right, so I apologize, but I have one more question. I've noticed a lot of people with PTSD up to the 70s and 80%, and which I definitely have. However, it was put into my claim under some kind of mental illness like depression and anxiety, as I have attempted to take my life a few times. I did not have all of that documentation, but I was told by the VA rep that to put in for PTSD on top of my depression and anxiety, that it wouldn't be a good idea. Do you have any thoughts on that? Okay. This is another really good question, but I'm going to sound like a broken record in regards to your claim. But let's talk about the pyramiding piece. on what happens with your question. You are service connected, right? They've acknowledged whatever mental health condition they've service connected you for, it's already approved as service connected. So if you feel like, just given your recent events, that you warrant an increase, focus on that, right? Focus on submitting your increase in which your condition's gotten worse, not so much more what the condition is called, what they've labeled it as. It falls under mental health, right? And just to address the top comment, you're in the VA rating criteria is 30, 50, 70, and 100. So if you're going to pursue the increase, you really need to understand the rating criteria for mental health and what actually would warrant that increase to 100%, right? You don't want to just throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. You definitely want to make sure you're submitting a fully developed claim so that the VA is awarding you what you deserve.
Veronica, what is pyramiding? Well, today that's what we've been talking about this entire time, and hopefully, I know we had some technical issues, so hopefully you can go back and on YouTube. I believe the link was dropped in the chat, so please definitely go visit it. But basically, pyramiding is when when there's multiple conditions that have the same symptoms. The VA will only give you compensation for one condition, not multiple symptoms when it comes to the same condition. So basically, the rule, as I mentioned in the training, the pyramiding rule is written in a 38 CFR 4.14. And it literally says, the evaluation of the same disability under various diagnoses must be avoided. So in plain English, that's basically saying once you can only be rated once for each symptom, not for every current diagnosis that causes it. So hopefully that answers your question, but please take the time to review this Facebook Live on YouTube. Again, the link is posted in the chat.
And to kind of tie into Mia's question, I just tuned in. How do I watch if this is recorded from the beginning so I get this great information from y'all? So as soon as the live ends, guys, you can watch the replay. All right, so as soon as it ends. So that'll help. So we don't have to go all the way through everything again. All right. Let's see. I have an appeal for about 3 years for sleep apnea. How long does it take for me to learn what is going on? Wow. When you say you've been in an appeal for 3 years, there's a couple of different types of appeals, right? So it really is hard for me to answer your question confidently. If it's like a supplemental claim, if it's a higher level review, or if it's a BVA appeal. I know if it's a BVA appeal, that's not something we really help with, but you're in line, basically, like your claim is in docket. So you basically just have to wait your turn. But just to make sure, Lawrence, that there isn't something going on specific to your claim that they're waiting on from you, and that's the delay, call the VA hotline. Just get some information, some clear information on where your claim is at in the process, and if there's anything that they need from you to move along the process. Okay.
All right. At Chuck McCutcheons 9974. What if I don't have much medical evidence for issues? Well, here at VA Claims Insider, you will hear us say all the time, and you heard us say it on this live, medical evidence is what wins claims. So if you have ongoing issues that you're interested in filing a claim for, get to the doctor. Start building that medical evidence, because it is going to be needed to win your claim. All right. And remember, back to the clues of triangle that Coach Seabury had mentioned before, you need a current diagnosis, current meaning a year to 2 years. It's going to need to be an in-service event, injury, or illness, and then tied together through the link, also known as a nexus. All right. And it is a medical opinion with the rationale of how those two link together. All right, so get to the doctor. Start building that
And
medical evidence.
that's right. And as far as like medical evidence for issues, I know a lot, and this isn't the question that Chuck asked, but for those that are wondering what they can file for, what they can do if they don't have any medical treatment records from service, so service medical records, you don't need to wait on those, right? Sometimes there is a strategy that doesn't even need to use your military medical records. So don't let that or requesting those records keep you from moving forward today, right? That's where getting with a coach is so important, because we can develop a strategy that, might not need your military medical records.
Mhm.
All right. So thank you all for these amazing questions. That's going to wrap us up for today's live. I know it was a rocky start in the beginning with the frozen and everything, but as we mentioned, click replay, start it over, catch the beginning. It was some good information. I mean, I'm not just saying that because it was me and Coach Kimberly. I think it was pretty good. But if we didn't get to your question, don't worry. One of our amazing coaches or team members usually circles back and answers questions in the chat, so everyone's question will get answered. All right. And we did cover a lot, what pyramiding really means, how it affects your rating, how understanding the rule can actually empower you to build a stronger claim. If you take one thing away from today, let it be this: education is your strongest weapon. And the SEM method, strategy, education, medical evidence, is how you put that knowledge into action. The more you understand how the VA rates symptoms and evaluates your evidence, the more confident and in control you'll feel throughout the claim journey, right? You'll sit waiting for that decision confidently instead of fingers and toes crossed. So remember, you don't have to do this alone. Having the right education and support can make all the difference. Avoiding pitfalls like pyramiding and moving forward with clarity and confidence is what we're here for.
That's right. It's all about being informed and intentional. When you understand the rules and how your condition and symptoms are evaluated, you're not guessing anymore. You are leading your claim with purpose. Coach Seabury, thank you so much for joining me today and for breaking this all down with me. And to all the veterans that are watching, thank you for being here, asking some great questions, and for trusting us to be part of your journey. If you want to learn more about how SIM applies to your situation, schedule a discovery call at go.vainsider.com. We'll see you next time for another session where we're going to keep bringing you the education, strategies, and insight you need to understand the VA claims process and take charge of your results. Until then, stay encouraged, stay proactive, and keep moving forward. We'll see you all very, very soon. Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you so much. It's been amazing, Coach Kimberly.
Yes, it was fun.
Have a great